Hello, bonjour, salamu, sandonani. I think we are about ready to start this evaluation excellence exchange with AfrEA. My name is Jennifer Norrings. I'm the chairperson of the South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association, and I have the honor to be the moderator for today's session, where we will be discussing the opportunities and innovations for evaluation capacity building in Africa with our three esteemed panelists, Mr. Abdoulaye Gounou, Public Policy Monitoring and Evaluation Expert at the Presidency of the Republic of Benin, Ms. Zakina Winyimku, Director of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation at the Office of the Prime Minister of the United Republic of Tanzania, and Dugan Fraser, Program Manager at the Global Evaluation Initiative. Before I go into a little bit more of an opening, I want to remind people that there is simultaneous interpretation available for you in French and in English. So it is important that you choose your language of preference in the little icon at the bottom. And there is also a Q&A box available for you to put in any comments and questions. So over the past 5 years, the evaluation field in Africa has been very much expanding given thanks to the work of AfrEA, National VOPEs, and the capacity building initiatives by GEI, Twende Mbele, Clear AA, and others. We are seeing formidable voices coming from Africa, pushing for more African-centered and African-driven evaluation and evidence use. Practitioners and evaluation champions from Africa are contributing to critical conversations on the role of evaluation in facilitating positive transformations in our societies, particularly to address the polycrisis. So in the conversation today, we will aim to elaborate on some of these developments and opportunities for the evaluation field in Africa, and to talk about how the sector needs to continue to grow to further contribute to the development of our countries. So without taking up too much more time, I'd like to start the conversation, allowing our panelists opportunity to introduce yourselves. So panelists, you have about 5 minutes or so to introduce yourself each. And in your introduction, I'd like for you to really explain kind of the perspective that you bring with you today and for today's discussion. And then also to highlight what you see as the critical issue for evaluation capacity building in Africa in this current day. As we start, we will start with Ms. Zakina Winyimku to start your introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everyone. Habari ya jioni for those Swahili speakers from East Africa. And bonjour for French speakers. My name is Zakina Winyimku, as Jennifer has introduced me a little bit. I work with the Prime Minister's Office, Policy, Parliament, and Coordination here in United Republic of Tanzania. And my overall responsibilities here is to on performance monitoring and evaluation. So we have overall coordinating role for monitoring and evaluation within public sector. And I've been involved in evaluation for 7 to 10 years now, but practically on M&E systems, whereby I've also been involved in a number of evaluations, like reference groups, but also capacity building, provide capacity building to M&E within the public sector of Tanzania. But today I would like also to share with the attendees in this session on the challenges that we are facing as African countries in monitoring, especially in evaluation, and what are the best approaches, mechanisms to ensure that we encounter those challenges and able to move forward to strengthen our MNE systems across African countries. Yeah, hand over to you, Jennifer. Thank you. You are all welcome.
Great, thank you very much. And so now we will turn to Mr. Abdoulaye Gounou.
Bonjour, chers participants
Dear participants, good
ce
afternoon and welcome to this webinar.
Comme celle qui m'a précédé,
As my
Jennifer a fait une brève
predecessor
introduction me concernant.
said,
Mon
Jennifer
nom,
briefly
effectivement, c'est Abdoulaye
introduced me.
Gounou.
My name is Abdoulaye Gounou,
Jusqu'en 2021, effectivement,
and up
j'étais
to
au cabinet du président de
2021,
la République
I
du
was
Bénin,
working at the
où je
presidency of the
m'occupe de
Republic of Benin.
l'évaluation des
I've
politiques publiques au niveau
been
du
in
Bénin.
charge of
Mais
public
depuis juillet 2021,
works,
la fonction de
but
l'évaluation
since
a migré vers
June
le ministère du
2021,
Développement
that
et
department
de la
was moved to
coordination
the
de l'action
Ministry of
gouvernementale. Et donc,
Development
depuis
and
cette date,
Coordination of Public
je suis
Activities.
au
So since
ministère
then,
du
I've
Développement
been working under the
et de
Ministry of
la coordination
Development
de l'action
and
gouvernementale. Et
Government
donc, je
Activities
participe
Coordination.
à
So
ce webinaire pour
I am in this session
partager avec
to share
les participants non seulement
with participants
l'expérience du Bénin
not
dans
only
le
the
processus
experience of my country,
d'institutionnalisation de
Benin,
la fonction
in terms of the
évaluative
institutionalization of
au
the
niveau du Bénin, mais
evaluation
également
activities,
partager
but also
avec tous ceux qui sont connectés
share with
pourquoi
all
nous
the
faut-il
participants why
professionnaliser
we need to
la fonction
professionalize
évaluative
the
dans nos pays
evaluation
respectifs,
activities
pourquoi
in
il
our
faut
various countries.
procéder constamment au renforcement des
Why do we
capacités
need
des
to
acteurs
undertake
nationaux
a
de
continuous
façon
capacity
à
building
permettre
for national
une plus
stakeholders
grande
in
appropriation
order
de
to
l'évaluation par les
facilitate
différentes
a better
administrations
ownership
et
of
enfin dire
evaluation
dans quelle
processes by
mesure
our
il est
various institutions,
important
and
de
also
disposer de cadres
to
formels
point out
pour promouvoir une bonne
why
pratique
we
de
need formal
l'évaluation dans nos
framework
pays
for
respectifs.
a
Voilà ce que je
proper
vais
evaluation
discuter, échanger
process
avec
in
les
our
autres
countries.
panélistes tout au
So
long
this is what I'm
de ce
going
panel.
to touch on
Merci,
during
Jennifer.
this session. Thank you. Over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Gounou. And then over to you, Dugan.
Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. I think as Jen said, my name is Dugan Fraser. I'm the program manager of the Global Evaluation Initiative. The Global Evaluation Initiative is a program that's been running for 4.5 years. It builds on previous programs implemented by the Independent Evaluation Group at the World Bank. And the Global Evaluation Initiative is co-chaired by the United Nations Development Programme's Independent Evaluation Office. We're a network of organizations and experts, and people probably know us best for the work we do through our Centers for Learning on Evaluation and Results. As you may know, there are 6 CLEAR centers. 2 are based in Africa, and the third, the one in Brazil, also does work in Portuguese-speaking African countries. We also are very honored to be the principal mechanism that supports the Independent Program for Development Evaluation Training, IPDET, which is based at the University of Bern in Switzerland, and which for the first time this year will be doing decentralized or regionalized deliveries of the IPDET program. We also run the Better Evaluation website, which we took over a couple of years back and which we are working to turn into a knowledge platform for the GEI more broadly and to really reinforce its status as the premier go-to source for information on evaluation-related knowledge. Also, sorry, just to keep droning on and on, but we also convene the annual Global Evaluation Week, which happens in June every year. We've just announced the topic. It seems to me very, very, what can I say, timely and appropriate with its focus on environmental sustainability, inclusion, and peace, which, given where the world is at, feels very, very relevant. I think for me, oh, and sorry, I should talk a little bit about my background. I worked principally in government for about 15 years, working in national, provincial, and then later in continental government institutions. Subsequently worked in philanthropy for a number of years, and then became the director of the CLEAR in Johannesburg, CLEAR Anglophone Africa, and I've been leading the GEI since 2021. Obviously, this experience has been very, very helpful for me, and it means that I have a good understanding of what goes on in government, in international institutions, in philanthropies, and I hope that I get to apply this knowledge through the way the GEI operates. I think, at risk of droning on and on, I'm going to just highlight some of the key topics I want to focus on. And the things I want to speak about are what I'm, I think, most impressed by, which is the emergence of a really strong cadre of leaders in the African evaluation space. And I want to talk for a moment about African leadership of evaluation. I think my colleagues on the panel, Sakina and Abdullah, as well as you, Jen, are examples of people who are demonstrating active leadership of the evaluation space. And I think it makes an enormous difference. I want to talk briefly about some of the innovations in the methods community, which I think are really important to take into account as people work both on randomized evaluations and trying to make them more rigorous, as well as on mixed methods evaluations and some of the thinking that's going on there. In particular, I want to highlight the role of decolonizing evaluation and made in Africa approaches. And I want to talk for a moment also about how evaluation, I think, is starting to shift what it does and is starting to become much more interested in achieving influence and in making sure that the interventions that it evaluates achieve impact. And that drive to making sure that evaluation is part of more successful, more effective interventions is something I want to highlight in the African context. Nobody who's working in evaluation cannot be talking about AI and the effect that large language models and big data systems are having on our community. And I think in Africa, there's a very special dynamic that I want to name. And finally, I want to talk briefly about financing for evaluation capacity development. And I want to highlight this as a major issue for people who work in the space. And so I'm looking forward to the conversation. And back to you, Jen.
Okay, great. So for our audience, the intention of today is really to try to have it as a conversation. I have some questions for our panelists to spur on this discussion, and they will be bringing in their different perspectives and key issues that they want to bring into those questions. I see Sakina has joined us again. I was noting that she had dropped off. So we will start. The first question is, from your different contexts, from your different spaces where you are operating, what do you see as the key drivers requiring change or expansion in the evaluation capacity building space in Africa? So what's requiring change and expansion, and also what's pushing it? And go ahead, yes.
Bien.
Please.
Merci beaucoup
Thank you
pour cette question. Il faut
for
dire que,
your question.
déjà, il y a
I must say that
une quinzaine d'années, quand on regarde un
15
peu
or 10
le
years
vent de
back,
l'évaluation qui
when
soufflait sur le
you
continent,
look at
il
the
y
major
avait
trends on the
très
continent,
peu de pays africains
you notice that
qui
very
se
few
sont
African
engagés
countries
dans
were committed
l'institutionnalisation de
to the
l'évaluation
institutionalization
dans
of
les administrations publiques.
evaluation in public institutions.
quand on regarde de près, il y a
When you
une
look at it
petite minorité
carefully,
de
you notice
pays
that
qui ont pris
there are few
le leadership
countries
de,
that
de
took the
cette
lead
activité sur le continent.
when it comes to
Globalement, on a l'habitude de
evaluation on
citer
the
l'Afrique du
continent.
Sud,
We
l'Ouganda
talk
pour
often
ce
about
qui est des
South
pays
Africa,
anglophones,
Uganda for
et
Anglophone
le Bénin
countries,
pour ce qui est
Benin
des pays francophones.
for Francophone
Pour ces
countries.
trois pays se sont
These
résolument
three
engagés
countries
pour
were committed,
faire de
strongly
l'évaluation
committed
une véritable
to
fonction au sein des
make
administrations à
evaluation
travers
a full-fledged
ce
function
que
within
ont
public
appelé les
institutions
systèmes
through what
nationaux
they call
d'évaluation.
national
Alors,
evaluation systems.
en ce moment-là, il y a aussi
At that
très peu
time,
de pays qui
there were also
ont un
few
cadre
countries
légal,
that had
réglementaire
a
et
legal and regulatory
institutionnel
framework as well as
établi
institutional
pour aider
framework
à conduire
to
les évaluations et à promouvoir, n'est-ce
promote
pas, la fonction.
evaluation.
Mais depuis, les choses sont en train de bouger sur le continent.
However,
Et de
things are
plus en
evolving
plus,
on the
les pays
continent,
s'engagent
and more
à faire
countries
de l'évaluation
are committed
une véritable
to
fonction au sein des
making
administrations pour
evaluation a
soutenir
full-fledged
la
function
qualité
within
des
public
politiques qui sont
institutions in order
élaborées
to support
et de
political
façon à améliorer
decisions
les conditions de vie
and
des
also
populations
to
à
improve
à
the
l'intérieur du pays.
well-being
Donc, c'est un
of
vaste
our
mouvement
various citizens.
qui
So it is
aujourd'hui
a
est en
broad
train de
movement
se
that
déployer
is
sur tout le continent
being
après
deployed
que
across the continent.
l'activité d'évaluation, la fonction
And
d'évaluation
the
ait été promue partout sur
evaluation
le continent
activity
par
and
nos
function
partenaires techniques
is
et
being
financiers, ceux
promoted
qu'on
by
appelle
our
communément les
financial
bailleurs, parce que
partners, better
l'expérience
known
a
as
prouvé que
donors,
ce sont ces
because
partenaires
experience
qui
clearly
évaluaient dans nos
shows that
pays les programmes
it
qu'ils
was
ont aidés
donors
à
who
mettre
were
en œuvre,
assessing
qu'ils ont
the various
accompagnés
projects
financièrement, alors
they
que
financially
nous, nos
supported
propres
on the
projets
continent,
qui sont financés
while
par nos
our
budgets
own
nationaux sont
projects
restés
that
sans
were
être
developed through
évalués.
public
Toute
funds
tendance qui est en
were
train
never
de changer depuis
evaluated.
maintenant près d'une
But
quinzaine
this
d'années
is
grâce à
changing,
ce nouveau
and this for
vent
the
qui
past
souffle sur
15
le
years
continent
through the
et de
new
plus en plus dans nos pays,
wind of
on va
change
parler
blowing
des
throughout the
systèmes nationaux
continent. And we
d'évaluation
are now talking
où
about
petit à petit
national
les
evaluation
gouvernements, les
systems
administrations
through
publiques,
which
les États sont en train
gradually
de
public
prendre
institutions
conscience
and
de la
government
nécessité de
are
l'évaluation et de
becoming more
l'ériger
aware of the
en une
importance
fonction
of
entière au sein des
evaluation in
administrations
order and
de
are
façon
trying to make it a
à
full-fledged
traquer la bonne
function
marche de
in
nos
order
différentes
to
politiques. Mais comme vous le dites
track
dans votre
the
question,
various
ce mouvement
decisions
ne
that
se
were
fait
made.
pas sans
But as
difficulté, sans
you
défi
clearly said, this is
énorme des
not
fois
without a lot of
pour certains
challenges
pays.
for some
Et
countries.
donc, au nombre de ces
Therefore,
défis, je voudrais
I would like
prendre
to
appui sur
mention
l'expérience du Bénin, qui n'est
the
pas
experience
totalement
of Benin, which
expérience
is
différente de ce qui se passe
not
partout
quite different
sur
from
le
what
continent,
is
qu'il s'agisse
applicable to all the other
des zones
African
anglophones
countries,
ou
be it in
les zones francophones du
Anglophone
continent, c'est
or
quasiment les
Francophone
mêmes
countries.
expériences que nous sommes
It is
en
quite the same
train de vivre.
experience
Le premier
across
défi,
board. The first challenge
à mon sens,
that
c'est
I
faire
think
en sorte que
is important
15 ans
is
après
how
cet éveil
to
de conscience
ensure that
par
15
rapport
years
au mouvement
after
évaluatif sur
the
le continent, mais 15 ans
awareness
après, le premier défi
regarding this
reste
issue,
l'émancipation de nos systèmes d'évaluation
uh,
au niveau de nos pays.
the main
Pourquoi?
challenge is
Parce
how
que
to
ces
ensure
systèmes nationaux,
the
qu'on le veuille ou qu'on ne le veuille pas, sont
emancipation of
tributaires,
the
n'est-ce pas,
sector
des règles
in our
établies par
countries.
nos partenaires.
Because
Parce
you see,
que
the system
dans la
is
plupart de nos pays,
mainly
jusqu'à
based
aujourd'hui, et c'est pour
on
ça
what our
j'ai été
partners
heureux
set for
d'entendre
us. And
Jagan
I
dire que
was
dans son
happy
intervention, il va
when
parler un peu de la
Durgan
décolonisation, par
said
exemple,
he will
de
talk about
l'évaluation.
the
Ça participe
decolonization
d'un
of
autre
the
mouvement
process. It is
d'éveil
another
collectif, porté
awareness
aussi par
movement
AfrEA,
that is
qui est
also
les
being
évaluations Made in
encouraged by
Africa, qui
AfrEA, that is
plante l'identité
evaluation made
africaine dans
in
ce processus. Et ça,
Africa,
c'est
which
important
is
que
taking into
dans ce
consideration the
panel,
African
on trouve
identity. And it
l'occasion
is
d'en
important
parler un peu.
that
Donc,
this panel
l'un
touch on such
des premiers défis
issues. So
par
the first
rapport à
challenge
ce mouvement sur le continent, c'est comment on fait
is how to ensure that our national evaluation system are fully emancipated. The second one is how to organize ourselves in order to institutionalize an evaluation system in our country, because it's been about 20 years now that Benin has started this process, but the institutionalization is not yet optimal. It's not fully done. There are still a lot of things to be done in order to better anchor evaluation within the public sector platform. The third challenge when it comes to evaluation is importance and what it can give to our populations and administration is how to create 100% African evaluation ecosystem, an ecosystem that does not turn its back on European values, but taking into consideration the African values, so that in the emancipation movement, the ecosystem should reflect African realities in order to make progress. Allow me to conclude my intervention by mentioning the fourth challenge, that is how to help or how to enable the general population to also contribute to the evaluation, so that their contribution will also guide decision makers. Because when you are a decision maker and you develop policies and you implement them, most of the time we need an external view that will make contributions. So it is quite a challenge to ensure that African citizens are fully part of the evaluation process in our countries. I believe if we are able to overcome this, it will improve the ownership of the evaluation process and also ensure a better sovereignty of whatever effort we are making with that regard. So I will stop here with regard to the first question and give the floor to the other panelists while we are waiting for the other questions. Thank you. Over.
Thank you so much. Before turning over to Sakina, because I know you also have ideas to contribute on the institutionalization, I do think that, you know, particularly since January 20th, 2025, we are in a very critical stage. It's a kind of a turning point opportunity in many ways, with the shifts that are happening primarily driven by the United States current administration, and what this is meaning for, as you were talking about, the sort of those power dynamics of global North, primarily funding initiatives and driving evaluation. Are we now at a turning point where there can be much more ownership and self-direction, as opposed to being guided by external perspectives? But Sakina, I know that you have quite a lot to say about institutionalization of evaluation within government, public sector, and some of the challenges and opportunities that are there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jennifer. Yeah, maybe I would like also to add a bit from the first question, at least to highlight on the key drivers of course, on strengthening evaluations. And I would also like to give more perspective from Tanzania, because at least I know I'm here and I know what is going on. From my point of view, I am quite sure that for evaluation system to be well equipped, to be well institutionalized, there are several drivers that need to be acted on. And from my own opinion, I'm also thinking of country demand and ownership. And for this one, I also connect with political will. if there is a demand within yourselves, then it is easier also to act and also to make efforts to ensure all existing challenges, they are also corrected on the way. So for Tanzania, we are lucky. For these years now, there is a high demand from within ourselves. The top leadership is also making a lot of efforts to ensure monitoring and evaluation is institutionalized within the government systems. But also, this also comes from the intention to improve the public sector in general. So there is a demand, and we want also to own the entire process. And that's why we have made a lot of structure changes as well as systems to ensure we accommodate our intention to make sure MWIN is institutionalized within the government systems. But also, to me, the having strong and influential, the visible champions, they are very important, because monitoring and evaluation is kind of making someone to be, to perform, to make sure the results are seen and obtained. So if there is no inner influential, like having some champions from the top to institutional levels, then it is not possible. So for us, the key driver is having the champions, and we have tried to make it within the government. Of course, we have the top one, who is our president, but also, having the planning commission, but having the prime minister with the full department for monitoring and evaluation. But each and every institution, every ministry now have champions, and we are encouraged those champions to be used because of sustainability, and we are quite sure that the youth, MNE needs to have a mechanism that will make it sustainable, because it's the ways of life. It needs to be there. So for having youth as champions, to us, we ensure the sustainability of MNE and the evaluation system in general. But also we are now working, of course, on accountability and performance culture, which is an area which we really need to strengthen. But we are doing it through having Mel Weeks activities, whereby we involve a lot of stakeholders, connecting with VOPs, to make sure together we make we build this culture for MNE culture within, but also outside the government. So, but also we are also working on capacity also to design and use results for MNE results for making decisions. That is an area also is a driver, but for us, we are not doing great. So those are the areas which, as the driver, we need also to make sure we ensure we make evaluation reports and findings are used for making decisions, and also we are quite sure it will be the only means to ensure the challenges that are faced with many Tanzanians will be solved by using proper reports, proper information from the evaluation reports. Yeah, but coming to the challenges, straight which you have just asked the second question, in Tanzania, of course, we are implementing we are in the final stages of implementing our Tanzania Development Vision 2025, which is ending this year, but also the National 5-Year Development Plan, which also is ending this year. So all of these planning tools need to have a proper mechanism to ensure they are monitored and evaluated to provide positive results for Tanzanians. So through having these departments where I'm heading here, we will ensure that the indicators that are developed within those national planning works are really provide the outcomes that we expect to see at the end of implementation, and not only the process of indicators. So we will, as the department, we have that role to work closer with the Planning Commission to ensure the indicators that are developed within the 5-year development plan are describing the outcomes, the aspiration of the vision to be achieved in the coming 25 years. But mainly for Tanzania, and I think this is to most of African countries, but I'll cite more examples from Tanzania. The main challenges which we have, it comes from institutional setups, but also there are systemic challenges. And challenges like having weak fragmentation of MNE systems, although we as the government have been working a lot to ensure the systems are integrated. Hello?
Yes, carry on.
Okay. Yes, to ensure that systems are integrated, but also we are avoiding having multiple authorities on the same, because monitoring and evaluation is managed by more than 8 government institutions, which have got mandate on their own. And this also, I have come to realize also many countries, they have the same structure like us. But we need a coordinating institution. That's why the Prime Minister is there to make sure they coordinate all efforts coming out from all those 8 institutions. So the issue of fragmentation being a challenge sometimes weaken the efforts for strengthening MNE systems within African countries. But also the challenge on data management. And this is a big challenge because most of the data the data part is crucial because this is the one that gives the real picture of what is happening from the ground and what are the decisions to be made based on the findings. So when the data don't have quality, they're not accurate, sometimes it's a challenge. And this is a big challenge also to our side. But we are trying as the government to ensure we treat the source where the data are coming from. And we know most of our data are coming from local level. So what we are now doing is to strengthen MNE system from local level to empower local government authorities, whereby they're all supposed to go more to the grassroots to ensure data management is starting from there, to capacitate, to empower them on tools development, to ensure that they know the quality of data required, but also to develop the system that will connect, will capture it up to the national level. And challenge which we are seeing here is the technology. Technology, we are in an era whereby we think technology is, of course, is like a saver to many things within our context. But the connection to those who are collecting data, especially to the local level, is an area also is a challenge. But we need also to work out to make sure that we get the best from it. But also, it's like a limited adoption of digital evaluation tools, and of course, over reliance on traditional data collection and methods. Sometimes delays and lead to inefficiency in so many ways. But another challenge is the capacity. Of course, for this capacity, or in terms of skills, and we are trying also to resolve this because we have done a lot of assessing on the capacity of staff within the public sector to do evaluations. And we have found that this is an area where it needs more attention. So what we have done, we are trying also to collaborate with our colleagues to ensure they give their best to us. Like now we are working, of course, with the Global Evaluation Initiative, the EVO and the CLEAR centers to make sure we provide hands-on training on doing evaluation. Because we want to cure the challenge of people not doing evaluation with the reason that they don't have capacity. So we are now trying to ensure we use existing capacities from stakeholders like CLEARS, GEI, and the EVO to strengthen capacities of our staff in doing evaluation. And this is it's not only training, but it's training by doing, because we are using the programs implemented in the government to do evaluation, program evaluation. And then those participants who are participating in the session, they are going also to be champions in doing evaluation. And of course, the TOT is to train others where they come from. And we, through also having the champions, we think they need also to be given trainings so that for sustainability, as I've said earlier. But this also is a call for college and research institutions on capacity meaning workforces within the government, because colleges, they have the role on research, of course, training and the rest, and consultants, but they have also to ensure to see these efforts coming from the government, so to support this move and provide to join efforts for training and support the government initiatives to strengthen MNE. But also they need also to recheck their curriculums, because you cannot produce the products that will not be utilized within the government. So we talk to the colleges to ensure they review their curriculum so that they can fit to government needs. Although they are the ones who do a lot of research, so maybe they are aware of areas which need to be strengthened. They can also advise the government that this area for need maybe to be strengthened, because where we are moving, there are changes which are coming, we have through our reports. So colleges, universities, we are also working very close to them. But also we at the PMO, we developed the National Evaluation Plan, which also provides the opportunities to share a lot of evaluations which are supposed to be done in particular year. And because we don't have also capacity in terms of funding to do evaluations, we just give a room for others to see our plans and also to join efforts to the government to do evaluations. So we also welcome a lot the academia, but also the VOPs, the TANEA, which we are working very close, but also other international organizations to do evaluations which have been planned within our national evaluation plan. But a lot of challenges like minimal utilization of reports, political governance, sometimes political changes. We are lucky now. We have the leaders who support us a lot in evaluation. But you never know what is coming next. But those are you might come with different priorities. But at this point, we are quite comfortable and we see everything is moving. Thank you, Jennifer. Maybe I'll add other later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sakina. Clearly, Dugan, as you said, there is strong leadership with both of these colleagues, and really such great examples, so much to kind of unpack in all of what has been shared so far. So Dugan, I don't know if you want to also address the question about what you see as kind of drivers requiring change or expanding evaluation capacity, or if you want to, because there are already some comments and questions in the Q&A box for you to unpack more what you mean about decolonization. And then I had a specific question for you around just as someone with a much broader global view on evaluation's perceived value and what's happening in evaluation spaces in multiple countries. What do you see as like key challenges that we really need to be tackling now, perhaps in more innovative ways? And then how do we need capacity building, what types of capacity building is necessary, or how does it need to change to meet those needs?
Thanks so much. And I mean, as you say, talking after Abdullah and Sakina often makes one look a little silly because they're so clever and they've said all the good things. But let me focus on that stuff. I think basically what Abdullah and Sakina are both saying is sort of absolutely correct. And what we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years is a shift in the audience that evaluators need to speak to. I think historically, development in Africa was funded and designed and in many ways owned by people from outside the continent. And I wouldn't say that the resourcing dynamic has shifted, but I do think the political dynamic has shifted, and that there's a much stronger interest in the sovereignty of these public management systems, as Abdullah mentioned. And I was interested to see used the word sovereignty. And I think how this has translated into an institutionalization agenda has been very interesting. And a number of very eminent authors on evaluation use the institutionalization entry point as a conversation starter to think about how evaluation gets embedded in public management systems. And I think, like both Abdullah and Sakina mentioned, the shift from focusing on individual studies to being able to understand these national evaluation systems still is a process that's underway. And I think one of the underlying challenges is the difficulties around causal inference. So to be able to infer a causal relationship between the intervention and the outcomes that are being observed at an individual study level, but also then more broadly across a system. So if you're delivering a major product, you want to be able to get some sense of certainty that the relationship between what you're seeing and what was done is a causal one. And those dynamics are really interesting. And I think in many instances, the RCT movement has positioned itself as the strongest case to make that link. But I think one of the things that's going on in the evaluation community is, while RCTs, I think, are getting better and focusing more strongly on what is randomization, how does randomization work, if at all, and I'm very interested in seeing a louder set of voices saying that randomization doesn't always do what people think it does. And we are seeing the emergence of a diverse range of practices, process tracing, and all of these sorts of more, I might call them mixed methods, or perhaps slightly more qualitative, but the qualitative-quantitative distinction, I think, doesn't really apply here. But overall, to kind of come back to your question at the end, I would argue that evaluation has been really focusing very heavily on the first half of its job, which is the production of a report to draw findings and make recommendations. But I think that increasingly there is an agreement that this is inadequate, that evaluation needs to do more to steward those findings, to make sure that the audiences who need to hear what is being said in an evaluation are able to receive those messages. And of course, that's a very difficult thing to do, because nobody wants to hear the bad news. I'm a program manager. My program is being evaluated at the moment. And I can tell you, it's very difficult to have to sit and listen to somebody give you feedback. And I have a colleague who tells me that feedback is a gift, but often it doesn't feel like a gift. It often feels like a punishment. And so we need to build strong, resilient institutions that are able to take the feedback that evaluation gives us. And we know that African practices, which are more participatory and more inclusive, are likely to increase the ability of institutions to take on that feedback when the evaluation process has had a particular character and a nature, so that you don't pop up out of the woodwork and say, here's the ugly feedback, but rather where people have been involved in a process that has allowed them to be ready to hear what needs to be heard. But I work at the World Bank, and no conversation would be complete without a conversation about financing. And I do think that one of the questions in the chat box made the point very clearly. How do we decolonize evaluation when so much of the financing for it comes from outside of the continent? And honestly, we really need to start seeing that shift. And we're starting to see country governments putting money into evaluation in ways that they didn't previously. We're starting to see organizational forms like the one that Sakina leads in Tanzania are becoming empowered. Abdullah has been absolutely tenacious in surviving political turmoil in Benin that I think would have flattened other people, but he's still there and he's still strong. And I think these are examples of the kind of resilient leadership that I admire so much, and which I think is so important. And it does come down to a question of what this work costs. And I see what evaluations cost. I see a big thematic evaluation at the World Bank will cost you a certain amount. I see an evaluation in a smaller multilateral development bank will cost you maybe half of that. And then I see in country governments where people are doing evaluations for $30,000, $40,000. And I think we need to start getting better at doing faster, cheaper, more directed evaluation studies that are easier for people to take on board. And that, I think, is a Made in Africa evaluation question. I think when we talk about leadership and we think about the role that Chilisa Bagele has played in providing us with a conceptual framework that's so helpful, when we look at Sakina and Abdullah and others in the space who are working in country governments, and we understand how someone like Adeline Sebanda, who's been working in philanthropy and who is contributing to changing the way evaluation is done in Africa, we see that there is a leadership and there is progress. People are doing well. But this question of financing, I do think needs to be tackled. And I do think one of the big questions is around how transformation of evaluation to overcome its colonial roots and allow it to become what it seeks to be is going to be financed. And I want to call on evaluation officials working in the space to start thinking about the post-2030 agenda. How do we start making sure that the SDG successor is in fact going to be much more joined up? Because I think the major critique of the SDGs is that they didn't link evidence producers sufficiently with evidence users. And I think evidence users, people who make policy, need to be listened to more around how evaluation feeds them the evidence that they need. And so this idea that we can just operate in these various different silos and people can do beautiful things, I just don't think we have the financing for that anymore. We have to be much more targeted. We need to join things up much more systematically. We need to use monitoring data more systematically in the way we do evaluations. We need to make sure that the evaluations are asking the right policy questions. We need to make sure that the recommendations get implemented. And so the kind of haphazard nature of evaluation, not just in Africa, but universally, I think we have to become much more targeted, focused, and real about it. We need to really mean this, that we want our policies to be based on evidence. Even though we know that that's often not true, we know that material interests, cultural norms, personal opinions often beat evidence as a driver of public policy. But we know that if we present evidence better, if we make it more palatable to people, if we involve them in the process, and these are African practices. This is what Made in Africa evaluation is about. We will see evaluation becoming more relevant and meaningful and becoming more useful in ensuring that interventions achieve their goals. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Okay, so then maybe just turning a little bit towards the space for maybe if we could talk about some kind of unique innovations that are emerging in Africa, or maybe innovations and issues that are emerging globally that as evaluators within Africa, we really need to tackle in a more intentional way. So Dugan, you had mentioned, for instance, AI and technology, and we know that this is a critical issue. We can't avoid it anymore. How are we addressing these types of developments from an African perspective, an African way? How does Africa contribute to those conversations, where right now a lot of AI is primarily driven from a global North European American perspective? But it doesn't just have to be AI, it can be other kind of big issues that we need to really think about tackling from a place from within Africa. And then how does that link to capacity building and what we need to be doing in our capacity building spaces? Abdullah, I don't know if you want to give that a go, or if you want Dugan to start off first.
Je vais toujours prendre la main pour
yes, I want to take over in order to try to address this issue where we have reached currently within the African continent. I have listed a number of challenges. The challenges are not exhaustive. In view of the concerns expressed by each and every one, I can see that this is additional challenge because now we are having the new technologies that are adding to the existing challenges. So you would understand that we are having a growing number of challenges as we speak. Generally, we can see that it means that we have to professionalize evaluation on our continent. So that's on top of the observations that we have made in terms of progress or how to advance evaluation on the continent, or regarding the champions of this evaluation, or in terms of the various political commitments that we need to support this movement. We have realized that if we have to give an identity to evaluation on the continent, we have to start by professionalizing this discipline. And professionalization, in my view, needs to take into account so many things, so many aspects. One of those aspects is human resources who are going to be involved in the process. My colleague from Tanzania has made a digression on this issue when she spoke about the champion, be it from the political arena, be it from civil society or simple citizen. So it means that we need the appropriate and quality human resources to do that job. On the other hand, since we are in the era of new technologies, we are seeing a lot of development. It means that Africa has to position itself to tackle all those new aspects. This also brings us to the issue of quality of human resources. The third element for me, in terms of professionalization, that is to give an African face to evaluation. It's part of the professionalization. It means that we need to be sure that our productions are of very high quality. And in order to have high quality productions, it means that we need to have cutting edge local expertise, well trained, who are able to take ownership of the best methods, who have the requisite tools to do the job. So necessarily, it means that we need to develop a number of curricula in partnership with our training centers. There's a need for us to take ownership of new technologies. Africa shouldn't fear the emergence of new technologies, because we are hearing that they can be invasive. So once again, it's up to us to take ownership of them, to see how we can make use of them. So here too, it becomes an innovation. It becomes an innovation because as part of professionalization, and if we have to accept innovation, we need to rationalize our resources because the continent doesn't have enough. So I do believe that we need this professionalization that also requires those elements. In my view, professionalization helps to develop local expertise and to make available the necessary and appropriate tools in order to give evaluation its own face. So I think that is what we need. So the last element in terms of professionalization, which I find very important, and which is an innovation. That is how to structure the evaluation market. This is very important. We need to structure the evaluation market. This also requires professionalization. We need to be able to have categories of professionals who have to drive our evaluations, be it accredited professionals, be it certified professionals, or those who have expertise in terms of practical evaluation on the field. So we need to take those steps so that not anyone can enter the evaluation arena to say that they are an evaluator. It is because of lack of the structuring of the evaluation market that people who are not evaluators come and grab the evaluation market. Sometimes you see economists, sometimes you see mathematicians, sometimes you see statisticians who have turned themselves into professional evaluators. Meanwhile, we have to ensure that evaluation is a specific profession on its own, which is not going to be a profession where people who think that they have finished with whatever they are doing and they can come and do evaluation. In our approach, in our innovative approach, we need to ensure that evaluation can be positioned as a full-fledged function where there are norms, where there are standards, where we should be able to say that, yeah, this person is an evaluation professional. It is not because the person is an economist or mathematician that they are necessarily an evaluator, or it is not because they are statistician that they can say that they are evaluator, but the person is an evaluator because the person has fulfilled a number of criteria. The person is in compliance with a number of standards that we have established for this profession, so that we can call that person a professional. And this will enable us not only to structure the evaluation market, but it will also enable us to structure this function and make it a noble one, so that it can earn the respect that it deserves from the various players, such as decision makers, such as partners. I mean, technical and financial partners who are our donors, or even the users of the product of evaluation, who needs to trust our product because they are convinced that the product is coming from professionals, people who do not only have expertise, but who have the skills and who have the requisite professionalism in order to do production, and not people who are just making use of a new technology, who are using AI to do evaluation. Meanwhile, evaluation is a social science. It's not just an automated production where we need interpretations, where we need to accommodate certain things so that it can be suitable to the realities of our countries and of our citizens, and so that our leaders can be not only the beneficiaries but the users of the products of our evaluations. It means that what we are saying here can be an innovative approach to enable evaluation to assume its position in our administration, because what we have realized today is that we do evaluation productions which seem to be like parallel productions aside those that we find in administration. So as a result, they are not directly incorporated into decision-making processes in our various countries. That is also another challenge. The challenge associated with using the outcome of our evaluation. We need to take that to keep that in mind. So we believe that this is what we've started doing in Benin since 2016. Very soon, it will be 9 years. So we have started embarking on a significant change. We have, I wouldn't say it is a 60-degree, a 360-degree turn, but we have been able to put in place some important reforms done by the government of Benin. And we also have this, we have passed this act, which is the Act on Development Planning and Evaluation, which not only makes evaluation the first entry point for the development of public policies, because henceforth in Benin, you cannot come up with a public policy, a new public policy, if the previous one has not been evaluated and the outcome taken into account in the new one. So this new act is organizing evaluation in Benin. So the law states who has to conduct the evaluation and whom the evaluation product has to be reported to. So that is the approach that we are using now, and which we also want African countries to emulate in order to steer their own movements toward the professionalism of evaluation. Our experience may not be the only one, because just like South Africa, Uganda, and Benin, and also Tanzania, which I have just discovered, these are government-driven systems. But we can also have parliament-driven system or civil society-driven system. We have examples, except that the impact is not the same. If the movement is driven by the executive, or if the movement is driven by a parliament or national assembly, or if it is driven by a professional association, the outcome is not the same, but everyone has to play their role depending on their national context. So we in Benin, it is the government that is driving this movement, and that is trying to involve all other players in this process. And how is it done? We have put in place what we call the institutional framework for public policy evaluation. And this framework is like a map of stakeholders at national level who can lead or who can drive evaluation processes. So those various stakeholders or players, including the government, the parliament, civil society organizations, and academia. So within this framework, we are able to ensure that all parties play their role. The academia, they are also there. Their role is to produce evaluation curricula. So today, we have at least 3 or 4 certificates that are issued in terms of evaluation in Benin. And we also have certificates for short courses for scholars who cannot go for long courses. They are practitioners who have been doing evaluation, but who need some fine-tuning in evaluation in order to get a certificate. So we have those certificates, and we have 3 master's degree programs that are at the level of the universities in Benin. That is the role assigned to universities. This is part of the innovation that we need to come up with in our countries to make this function a highly professional one, which produces high quality evaluation that can be used for a decision-making process within the country. Now, for Parliament, the Parliament has played its role. It's the Parliament that initiated the bill on the use of evaluation for planning. So today, there's no new public initiative in Benin. There cannot be a new public initiative if the previous one has not been evaluated and the outcome communicated to the country and also taken into account. So these are significant innovations that come to strengthen the process of institutionalizing evaluation as a full-fledged profession, as we have the functions of statistics in our administration and so on and so forth. The most important thing is that we need to work in our various countries to ensure that we can have evaluation as a full function, contrary to evaluation being considered just as an activity. For instance, when we have put in place a policy, when we have managed a project, and when the project comes to conclusion, then we can take an expert who can do evaluation and submit a report. That is no longer the case. Now we have to go a step further to make it a full-fledged function, so that evaluation, can become the outcome of institutionalization, where we can create an environment where we can set rules, we can put in place standards, and where we can also put in place a funding mechanism. We can develop tools, and all this will lead to evaluation, which is the outcome of the process of institutionalization, in my view. But we can do both at the same time, because we learn by doing. So as we do the institutionalization, at the same time, we are practicing and we are also learning from our mistakes in order to consolidate the institutionalization component. So all these are very important. When we talk about the evaluation of
Afterlife, I'm
when we
just
talk
aware
about
of our
evaluation,
time.
Voilà. Merci beaucoup.
So I just want to give a little space for Dugan to also come in on that issue of AI and and Sakina as well, and other issues, but then also make sure that we have time for questions. There are lots of really great questions in the Q&A box, and hopefully we will also have a little time for depending on our time, for the floor to actually ask questions directly to our panelists. So what you were giving us in terms of professionalization was really so valuable. In South Africa, we're also in this discussion currently about professionalizing the M&E sector, and I think we will need to have a conversation with you about what is happening in Benin as a learning, because it is really so rich, and definitely hearing from you that it is so important that evaluation is recognized as a critical function within public sector, to really drive the role and the value of interventions and so on. But wanting just to give space for Dugan and for Sakina, if there's anything else you would want to add on this issue of kind of innovation that we should be keeping our eye out for, or what you are seeing as emerging on the continent.
Sakina, would you like to go first and I'll follow you?
Yes, Dugan, let me start, because I know you are going to kill this area.
Go ahead.
Yes, actually on digital, I mean on technology, and of course increasing on usage of digital in evaluation. That's an area that we cannot escape so long as we are living in this world, because that's where the world is going. What we do, we need to put the environment to make sure we also go with technology, because we cannot get away from it. But for me, my own opinion, especially when talk of Tanzania, we are trying to get there, but we are currently thinking of having also digital platforms to have like M&E systems that will also able to collect data using a digital platform, rather than using the old systems of collecting data. But also we really want to leverage social media to make sure the citizens are well engaged, but we also get the citizen feedback and we integrate their feedback into our planning and our projects and the programs. And we really need to use this media AI-driven analytics to monitor policy reception, but also deploying mobile-based surveys, telecom networks for long-scale evaluations. And of course, currently with the Planning Commission, were directly responsible for projects, they are now moving to a step whereby they will monitor the projects using GIS, but the Geographical Information System, rather than going to the field, because we have like more than 3,000 projects. You cannot go all of the projects and ensure to see their progress. So with going forward, using GIS and satellite imaginary to assess different projects progress, I think that's an area we need to capitalize. Although it needs time, because we cannot reach there as quick as we want, but slowly we will get there. But I would like also to cement on innovations on capacity building. I'm lucky my brother Gunu from Benin has just highlighted on the use of our universities, because we government, we are on our side, we are policymaker, we develop guidelines for evaluation, but we are not academic institutions, or we are not a training institution. So having a proper collaboration with universities and academic institutions just to air out what we want, and then they incorporate our needs into curriculums, I think that will help a lot to ensure we get the best products who will serve within the government structures. Yeah, maybe, yeah, that's it. Maybe let me hand over to Dugan. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sakina. Look, again, I think Sakina and Abdullah have really said a lot already. Whatever I add is going to be marginal, but I do think that the question of professionalization is absolutely... Sorry, before I say anything, I just want to say to anybody listening to this webinar, if you're not reading the chat, you're only getting half the experience, because actually there's such great content on the chat. It's really like fabulous.
It is. And we will try to answer some of these questions depending on our time.
Okay, well, let me be very quick then. I think what I want to say is we really need to think about how the evidence ecosystems work in each individual country. And individual countries have their own histories, they have their own destinies, and we need to think about how evidence works in that particular context. We need to understand how evidence relates to other forms of evidence. So evaluation builds on monitoring. It feeds into foresight. It contributes to synthesis. And evidence that is produced from evaluation has a very particular character. It's robust for certain reasons. We must come to understand how evaluative evidence feeds into decision-making and how it gets produced by a strong ecosystem. And those ecosystems need to have a number of different elements. They need like a civil society formations, which we call VOPs. There's a question in the chat about what's going on in the US. I think VOPs are the most important mechanism through which evaluation can survive turbulence. We need evaluators to form entities that protect them, that defend them, that act as their little shelters, because the next few years are going to be tough. But having said that, I also think we need to think about professionalization and the profession of evaluation differently. I think evaluation is not a profession like being a doctor or being an accountant or being an engineer. I think evaluation is a very different kind of trance profession. It needs both content knowledge and skills. Understanding, if you're doing an evaluation of a water project, you need to have good sense of water. But it also needs evaluation skills. You need to be able to understand causality. You need to be able to define a good indicator. And so it requires people to have a mix of skills. But more than anything, I think what we want to understand is that evaluation is not necessarily and definitely better than any other form of evidence. It gets its strength when it's rooted in its context. And it's rooted in its context when people like Abdullah and Sakina are in the lead and they are making sure that it's it's embedded properly in the way these ecosystems work. That often means in an African context that the government is a key role player, but that doesn't mean that the private sector, which is increasingly using evidence to make its decisions, particularly in forms like impact investing and those types of very data-driven decision-making interventions. So we need to think about how we strengthen these ecosystems. There's a question in the chat about, I think it's from Labani Kanyonga, about what are we doing? So GEI does a whole lot of different stuff. We have a training program, training and professional development. We work with countries through country partnerships. We have a relationship with both Tanzania and Benin, as well as a number of other African countries. And we work a lot in the knowledge space. We understand ourselves to be building individual capacities, institutional capacities, and an enabling environment. And these things, I think, are all interconnected. They're very dynamic. They're very fluid. But what at the heart, we need for countries to own this stuff, and we need for them to prioritize it. And we need for them to make investments where they can, because it's only when you are financing something that you get to own and control it. And so I think for these reasons, the question about professionalization and about competencies, which are the technical foundations and the building blocks of strong systems, are, as Abdullah says, really important. But I'm going to hand back to you, Jen, so we have some time to talk about the questions in the chat.
Yeah, that's great. This has been such an interesting discussion.
Sorry, Jen.
Yes.
I want to say one more thing.
Sure.
Sorry.
It's okay.
When I think about the opportunities that AI, generative AI present, I find myself thinking not about ChatGPT, but I find myself thinking about DeepSeek. Because I think DeepSeek is a more African style. It's kind of building on what's been done elsewhere, some very expensive thing, and then making it appropriate and relevant for our context. So taking stuff that's being developed elsewhere, customizing it, tailoring it, tweaking it. And I think those are the innovations in the AI space that we need to look to experiment and do those things with an eye to scale so that we can make those things work at the necessary scale, but also to embed within them concerns about privacy. One of the worst things I think that's happened over the very recent past is the extent to which data has been violated. Data privacy has been violated. And we need to learn from these experiences. Sorry, back to you.
And also, I think, and we can have conversation about it depending, but is also this idea of sort of what's extractive versus what is really coming from, like, so how do people contribute in ways that are truly authentic, that's the right way of saying it, and are not extractive. And we know that a lot of AI, some AI does tend to be extractive, and not necessarily providing kind of the positive spaces for people to contribute. But that's, and then also that there is that need for the voices, the experiences from various African countries and other global South countries to be contributing into these conversations so that they're not showing a certain view of what Africa is like or what Asia is like or so on. Yeah, there's a lot going on in that space. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left to our time. I do know that AfrEA has an evaluation of this webinar that they would like participants to complete. So I believe that they will be putting that out onto a chat of some sort for people to access. And we do hope that you will take some time to complete that little survey. And then, yes, there are lots of really great questions here, but I think rather let's maybe give opportunity for one or two people to you can put your hand up, and our colleagues at AfrEA will select you and you can ask a question directly to the panelists. And we will try as best as possible to answer the questions that are here, either in the chat now or through maybe some email conversation.
Can I force my way in?
Sure. Yes.
There's so many great, really great questions on the chat, but I want to focus on the one that somebody targeted to me, and they said, are the weight of history and the use of quantitative methods in an oral society not obstacles to the decolonization of evaluation? What are the innovations in terms of decolonization implemented in the field of evaluation?
Beautiful.
Fantastic question. I think it is an obstacle to the decolonization of evaluation, but I don't think it's an insurmountable obstacle. And I would honestly say, and I've said this so many times to my colleagues who work in Made in Africa evaluation, that we need to move to the next level. Honestly, we need to start saying 1 + 1 is 2 in Africa or Europe or the US, but how that 2 lands and how it's understood may be different depending on the context. And so it's not purely a methodological question, it's a broader question. It's about context, it's about use, it's about power. And I think that Africans are very up to this challenge. I don't think there's any reason why Africans can't use quantitative methods in societies that have got an oral tradition. I do think Africans are super capable and able. And I think one of the major innovations in the data analytics space is the role of natural language processing. And so, for example, if you're interested in this, Linda Raftree runs a great group on LinkedIn on natural language processing. And I think if Africans can start to think of themselves as arriving at this conversation with some very, very magical and really useful techniques, practices, and traditions. So we're not arriving on this space with nothing. It's not that we offer nothing. We offer so much, but we need to understand those assets that we wield. I'll stop because I could just go on and on.
Thanks. And also just to put a little bit of a plug, Samea we have a community of practice on tech-enabled Merle. And so you're welcome to check out our website we're very much linked to Linda Raftree's work. And there's a lot of engagement and discussion on this issue of natural language processing. So yes. Are there any hands up, Caleb, for questions to the panelists? Or should I look for another question on the chat?
There is a hand from Herbert Limu.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, my name is Herbert from Prime Minister's office in Tanzania. I'm with Ms. Sakina. I would like to offer a different view. Yeah, we understand there are issues and problems, yes, but perhaps we should also see that Africa innovations and in developments that are like mixed. They're mixed because we have leapfrogged the development. So we have been taken back and forth, and right now when in time and era, since data is synonymous with evaluation, now we're trying to evaluate the context that sometimes we are putting some benchmark and standards that are with other advanced nations maybe. And that's why we're also right now talking about decolonization of evaluation. So it's very much important we come with the models that can be convenient for African context, understanding that there are some issues and development changes that we have leapfrogged, and that can put us in a safe space and put us in a position that we don't look at what is the West do, what is the Asians do. We have to look at what is the context within African development and within African rhythm. I would like to contribute on that, and some other comment I've put in the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And was that directed to Sakina or to Abdullah?
It's a general comment to the discussion.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any responses?
There is another hand. There are two hands. There's Eugene and Kila.
I I'd just like to add, I think it's such a good point, and I think it's really important because there is this thing that economists call the benefits of late coming. And I think that Africa is ripe to take advantage of those benefits because it's bringing its energy and it's bringing its solutions, and we have so much to offer. And I think that's a lovely point that got made.
Hello. Hopefully it can be heard. Jan, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Eugene here from Mandla. I would like to just add a voice to what has been mentioned before by our colleague from Benin, and also re-emphasized by both Sakina and Julian. Now, with the professionalization, we are a strong. I think, just like Dugan has said, the power that the developers bring on board is huge. Now, right now, as Africa, probably we're waiting for maybe, I don't know which, let's say an evaluation, something society from either Europe or from the US to develop, a metric that can actually measure and also offer certification, maybe like PNP or whatever. And yet, right now, we hold the power to do so. That we can actually be in a position to come together as workers by leadership from AfrEA, and we come up with a mechanism of actually ensuring that we can now professionalize the persons who are actually, practicing, this in this field. So, of course, putting in mind what Dugan has also addressed about, the trans aspect of evaluation is not as straightforward as other fields that we know are straightforward. So, can Africa? So this is to any of the panelists. Can Africa, in its capacity, be able to come up with the relevant, appropriate, home-based, indigenous ways of certifying, validating the profession in its form?
Great, thank
That's
you
a
for your
question.
question, Eugene. I'm not sure if there's any panelist that wants to give like a 30-second response as we're trying to close up. I know that President Miche wants to say something to the audience as we close, and I know there was also another hand up. So any really quick 30-second response to Eugene's question, or will we come to that some other how? So, and there's also opportunity to, in the LinkedIn discussion following this poster, maybe we can use that as a space for further questions and conversation in that space. Just appreciating your question, Eugene, but in terms of time, we are out of time. So President Miche, over to you to give us a close.
Sorry, Jill, before President.
Yes.
So we will be able to go through the questions and answer them accordingly, because I have seen a lot of interesting questions and I need to clarify to those who have raised it.
Yes, I would assume that Caleb at AfrEA, that there's a way that we can have those questions copied and that they can be then addressed so that they are answered. I think that would be appropriate.
Yes, that's fine.
So thank you, Jen, for this wonderful moderation of the webinar. Thank you, Dugan. Thank you, Abdullahi, and also thank you, Sakina. And I want to also say thank you to every one of you who attended this webinar. We are very pleased and happy to have you around and seeing the rise of a lot of questions, so that there is a good interest on how evaluation is evolving in Africa and how we can better work to have our own evaluation approach and methodology. There are so many questions regarding the Made in Africa evaluation. Just not to say breaking news, the next webinar will be related to the Made in Africa evaluation. So keep posted for the next event that is coming. I just want to use the opportunity also to let you know that this year AfrEA will celebrate 25 years. So the celebration is coming in next June 16 to 18 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. So we will keep you also posted for this news that is coming. So from the bottom of my heart and from everyone from AfrEA, I want to say thank you to the wonderful panelists. We had a great discussion, and we hope you will keep posted with AfrEA for next challenges and also next initiative that is coming. It's just what I wanted to say, and thank you, Jen, again for being part of us. And I would not want to forget all the team that is behind the scene that is working to make this webinar a reality for us. Thank you to all. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, President Miche. And again, yes, thank you to the panelists and thank you to the audience for your engagement. It's really been a great discussion. I've learned a lot, and we look forward to carrying on the conversation in other fora. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you, Sakina and Abdullah. Thank you to Miche.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.